Hi, everyone. This is Jessica Piro with Crisis Services, and we are coming to you with stories from our crisis first responders. So I'm excited to have with me today Cameron Ballin, who is our training specialist with our advocate department. And we really wanted to share the stories of our staff and their experience, not only in the work that we do here at Crisis Services every day, but also how we're adapting to the new way of doing things during the coronavirus pandemic. So Cam, thank you so much for helping me out and sharing your message out with the community. So I just wanted to kind of hear from you. You're one of our staff that is fully remote working. So wanted to talk
Yes.
to you a little bit about how that's been for you and how you've been adapting to your work from your home.
So it's definitely been a big adjustment. So in my role, I'm out in the community all the time. I'm at high schools and colleges and adoption agencies and the police academy and the truck driver school. I'm out in the community all the time. So immediately everything canceled. When schools were shut down, things like that, immediately things got canceled. One of the trainings I was really excited to speak at was a rehab center for women facing drug addiction. The counselors there determined kind of that a lot of women had sexual assault in their past. And so I was going to go in and chat with them, and that got canceled. And that was really sucked because I was really looking forward to talking to those women. But that everything just got canceled. And so now what we're kind of doing is building kind of backwards a little bit to where now I'm super busy with doing web-based trainings and things over Zoom. If this is going to happen at this time, happening at a time where technology is such a big part of our lives is kind of the best time for it to happen, because a lot of those trainings I have back now. I've got 3 trainings already scheduled for next week. And I've got like 4 more next week, the week after. So now we're just kind of like reevaluating, going back and figuring out what else we can do. I think the biggest change that's been tough is that we are no longer in hospitals to support survivors of domestic and sexual violence. And to me, that's my favorite part of my job. I love going out in the community and talking and training and things like that. But I believe for myself that going to the hospital, meeting survivors, sitting with them, kind of keeps me grounded in the work, like keeps me wanting to go out into the community and talk about these things, prevent them, advocate for folks to get services when they need, things like that, is all really rooted in that hospital response. And it's so tough that we're just talking to folks on the phone and trying to tell them, I'm here for you. I'm sorry it's on the phone. Every client I've talked to on the phone has been super understanding of that. They get that, why we can't be there in the hospital. For our sexual assault cases, our nurses are still there, which is a huge help to keep them kind of connected to crisis services. But that's been the toughest thing, is not being able to have that face-to-face with survivers. I am really glad to be face-to-face with a lot of our community members and things like that via these trainings, but with the survivors, that's been kind of tough. And I think a lot of my colleagues are saying that as well. And my colleagues, we're such a tight-knit family and advocate. Everyone is friends and hangs out, and we have group chats, and we have nights out and sleepovers and things like that. So not seeing these folks every day is really hard. So we're all doing like breakout Zoom chats with each other, like the case managers and then the prevention staff and like the hotline staff, just so we can all stay kind of connected and like check in, because we don't work in vacuums. Like we usually collaborate so much that it's so different to not just turn over to the person I share an office with and ask them a question about something. So we're adapting now to it. The first couple of weeks was a learning curve, and now I think we're kind of getting a lot better at it.
That's great. That's great. And it is hard. I think, one of the things, with the work here at the agency and just also just the staffing is that we are a close group, like to not be able to see you guys and not to be able to check in, and we're also a very social group. So to not have those opportunities have been very, very hard. So I'm glad Oh, it has. It's been really difficult. And I know the hospital response, that has been a hard piece as well. It was the hospitals, for the community to know, it was the hospitals that limited our ability to come into the hospitals,
Which I
understandably
get. It makes
so,
sense. Yeah.
right? But we also know how critical those interventions are, for our survivors. So that kind of leads me to my next question for you is just how do we continue to help survivors in this new way right now? We know that survivors of domestic violence as well as sexual violence, it's hard to come forward even in when everything's okay community wise, so to have such limitations and also to maybe have limitations that are also hindering their ability to seek help, I know is a concern for all of us. So what are some things or suggestions you would have of how we can help someone who's dealing with domestic violence or maybe has sexual violence going on that can reach out to us at this time?
So that's been the biggest question I've been asked by like other service providers, friends and family members, things like that, because has been a ton of reports around the country of domestic violence increasing if you're quarantined with your abuser and you literally are not supposed to leave. Some, cities are like really strict lockdown. So that's been kind of a really big question that I've been asked by a lot of people and just like my social groups or things like that. Our 24-hour hotline is still happening. I've been referring folks to that, to our 834-3131, as well as the New York State Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Hotline, as well as the national hotlines. All of those are, they're essential services. We're essential services. So they're still operating at full capacity, whether that's from home or everyone's social distancing at the office like we're doing. But for folks who have friends that are experiencing domestic violence, what I've been recommending is like safe words. So if I have a friend who is stuck in a home with an abuser and doesn't feel comfortable calling, the New York State Domestic and Sexual Violence Hotline, well, if I've worked out something with her where she can call me and says the word, Buffalo Sabres, I know that means something is bad and she needs police without saying on the phone, I'm getting abused right now, I need the police. Because in that time between when she makes that call and the police get there, a lot of bad things could happen. So we've been talking about safe words and things like that. I always recommend to folks to have a go bag packed, just like a grocery bag or whatever, of change of clothes, $5, an extra cell phone charge or whatever, in case you need to get out and go to a shelter or wherever you can, because those are essential services as well. The shelters are still operating, and knowing those essential services handy to give to a friend is a huge deal. So those are the two main things that I've been telling people all over the place.
Yeah. And I think those are just some great tips because it's also how we can help think of creative ways for safety planning with someone who is in an abusive situation. And I think it's thinking of, but safe ways to do that with either your family member or friend is really important, as well. So,
If you don't feel
and
comfortable calling the police and you have a friend that you can just call and say some nonsense word that doesn't mean anything to your abuser, but you've already established with your friend means something, can be huge. And that's a safety tip that I'll give to folks even not during this type of stuff. I've had a lot of clients I've worked with in the past who have utilized that. But especially now, I think that is probably going to be the most beneficial to folks who don't feel comfortable picking up a phone and calling a hotline or police in front of their perpetrator.
right, right. And it is important, as you mentioned, to remind everyone too that in addition to our services being available, the domestic violence shelters in the community are still running and operational. So if that is a need, there's ways that we can assure people can get to safe housing and safe shelter. So that's really important to highlight. So as you've kind of adapted over the last several weeks, kind of reflecting on your work, and you kind of mentioned early on like some of the loss really that we're experiencing by not being together, not being able to provide the services as we have had to some degree, and specifically in your department. But is there anything that you're kind of seeing differently for yourself in your work or for the organization as you've been adapting to this remote way of working?
So I share my office with 3 other people, and so we had a Zoom chat today talking about like what we are doing as far as like what projects we have ongoing and trainings and what we're working on and things like that. But then we were just talking about how we're managing this. And the tip that I'm doing is I'm actually shutting off my computer at the end of the night, because the first week and a half, week, whatever, I would keep my computer on, but it's in my living room next to my couch. So like I would, be watching TV or something like that and be like, oh, I'm just going to do one more thing real quick. I'm just going to send one more email. And then, the next thing I know, I'm sending emails at 9:30 at night. And I'm like, what am I doing? I was done for the day at 4. And so I needed like an actual barrier. And so having the computer totally off, it's harder, takes a couple extra steps to turn it on and get fired up and all that stuff. For me to do extra work helped me kind of, widen that gap between home and work, because the lines are getting so blurred between home and work right now.
Yes.
I used to accidentally always say like, oh, I'm going home when I would be going to work. And like now it's the same thing. So, so I'm like, I really wasn't making that many mistakes. So yeah, I'm trying to create like those physical barriers, and I'm still kind of doing my routines of like in the morning, getting dressed, doing my hair, putting on makeup, getting ready. Like I'm going to work, but I'm just like going to my living room. So, like, I think sticking to those routines, I think, is really important for people's mental health.
Yes.
Otherwise, you can just kind of get stuck in a sweatpants, doldrum. And next thing you know, it's June and you haven't, kind of gotten out of that. So for me, that's really what I'm focusing on. Like every morning is like turning my brain off from work to home and home to work. So, and I was just sharing that tip with my office mates, because I think that that's super, super important.
It is.
And I am still on call too. So like I'm talking to clients in my home on the phone that they're in the hospital, and that's something I've never done before. And so instead of like laying in my bed and taking a call, I'm going out into the other room and shutting doors and making sure that like I'm separated from that home life when I'm on the phone with clients,
Right.
because they deserve my attention.
Mm-hmm.
They deserve my undivided attention, and for me to be like fully awake and not laying in bed.
Right.
So, I've been really trying to make those tough delineations.
Mhm. Yeah, and those are, I mean, it's so important for, especially for the remote staff, is the kind of boundary, because your home is your work and your work is your home right now. But establishing those boundaries like you
Yeah.
have, and making sure
Yeah.
too you're shutting down your computer at night, make it, because it's easy for it to all kind of, like you said, kind of blend together. And our mental health right now for our community as well as ourselves to be able to continue to be the essential providers that we are is really critical.
Yeah.
So taking care of ourselves right now is really important, and sharing that with your colleagues and your coworkers is really helpful for them too, to hear kind of different ideas. I think our need for creativity is so critical right now for everything. So to be able to share ideas and suggestions and just keeping and checking in with each other is really great. I'm glad to hear you guys are doing
Yeah.
all of that. I wouldn't expect anything different, but I'm so
Yeah.
glad
And
to
like
hear
trying
that.
to take like extra long walks, because like, the walk from like my computer desk to like the bathroom or to my kitchen to get more coffee is much farther than it is at the office, or is much shorter than it is at the office. So like, all right, maybe I should get outside and walk around a little bit more. Like instead of just moving like 10 feet every couple of hours in the same 1-bedroom apartment.
Right,
It's a little
right.
difficult. So I'm trying to like focus on our physical health too, because now that's really important as well, of like physical health, mental health. We got to keep going. We're, essential personnel, like we got to be there. So we got to take care of ourselves so that we can be there for the people who need us.
Yeah,
Is what I'm trying to keep in mind.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So anything else you want to share out to the community right now about the work that you're doing, or anything, other tips around, especially for our survivors out there or just remote workers like you? Any other tips to share?
Well, I want, service providers and survivors to know that we're still here. We're not going anywhere. No matter what happens, we will always be there for survivors. It just is going to look a little bit different for now, but that doesn't mean it's forever. We're still going to always be there. Our services are not going to go away. That response to the hospital is always going to be the same. No matter what happens, we're still going to be there. And I run a team of volunteers, of 30 volunteers that are just itching to get back out into the hospital and help people. It's been really hard on them too. And so we're all in this together, and we're trying to get back out there when we safely can. It's sorry, technical difficulties, working from home. So, just that we're always there. We're always there for survivors, whether it's the hotline, whether it's the hospital, things like that. We're not going anywhere. It's just going to look a little bit different. And, change out of the sweatpants if you're working from home. I highly recommend it. Change out of your sweatpants.
Yeah, how how you feel is so important. So getting up, getting dressed, I know it can be easy to just want to, throw some comfy clothes on and pull your hair back and call it a day, but like it does make you feel, gives you a little energy.
Makes you feel like you're at work.
Yeah. It's really important to do that. So it's a good reminder.
That's what I've been telling everyone. Don't wear sweatpants all day.
Yeah.
You won't feel better about it.
Well, thank you so much for taking time with me today. I'm so excited to share our lovely Cam with our community. One of our great first responders here at Crisis Services who helps us to keep our mission going even during this trying time, and making sure our community knows we're here. So thank you, Cam, for everything you're doing. And thank you for, all that you do for Crisis Services. And to everybody out there, we'll be sharing more stories from our crisis first responders during the COVID-19 experience, but also for you to learn a little bit more about us and who we are, and also members of our team. So thanks again, Cam. It was good to see you.
Thanks. Nice to see you. This is so weird. Bye, Jess. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.